Someone call the doctor because somebody got my young adult fantasy novel and my grimdark wartime fantasy. The Poppy War is a 2018 fantasy novel by R.F. Kuang and is the first in a trilogy of books simply called The Poppy War. Fang Runin, or Rin for short, is a war orphan who manages to ace an entrance exam to a very prestigious military school. This encompasses part 1 of the book. We follow Rin as she struggles with school bullies, shitty teachers, etc. It's all very Harry Potter mixed with some Avatar The Last Airbender. The teacher she decides to train under is a lore master, and literally one of the first things that he shows Rin is how he can bend air to his will. A lot of people say that it's practically a straight ripoff of The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, but I can't confirm that as I've not read the book, but it's on my list. This is easily, I think, the most interesting part of the book. While it is a very standard young adult affair during this period, the world building and the magic system are detailed very well. If you want to learn magic, you gotta consume poppy seeds or smoke opium. For legal reasons, this was not legitimate medical advice. This section goes on until the Federation of Mugen, which is the stand-in for Japan in this series, invades Sinigard and the lore master unleashes something unnatural upon the city to ward them off. And then everything escalates. And I really hope you have a strong stomach for some of the descriptions going forward because it gets dark. So I'm going to warn you now, things get very graphic and very depressing. So if you feel the need to click off this video, I do not blame you whatsoever. In part 2, the book goes from young adult school shenanigans to grimdark war really fucking fast. Rin gets sent to a military contingent full of misfits and outcasts led by the charismatic Alton, who was touted throughout all of part 1 as this absolute stone cold badass who can control his god, the Phoenix, and is a master of fire magic. Turns out he's not a very good military leader, and the rest of the characters in this section just feel very one note. Even Rin, who up to this point has been eager to prove herself that she's not just a lowly peasant, becomes sort of an immature, drunk with power, angsty teen. It's for good reason, mind you, but this characterization literally does not change up through the end of the book. Anyway, part 2 here is a lot of military strategizing. You learn that Alton is actually kind of a dickhead, but Rin is in love with him for some reason, and to me, it's in a way that feels very uncomfortable. There's some graphic violence here, but it's nothing compared to what's coming next. Part 3. Infamously, Chapter 21 is nearly a direct recitation of the rape of Nanjing. At some point, one of the characters that we haven't seen since part 1 of the book vividly describes being used as, quote, a public toilet. She also goes into vivid detail about how the Mugenese tore apart babies, animals, pregnant women. It's a lot. It's very hard to read, and I imagine it hits incredibly different if you're someone who is of Chinese descent. Eventually, Alton and Rin get captured by Mugen soldiers and are taken to a research facility focused on taking Nakara people and experimenting on them, much like the real-life Unit 731, which is also another very dark, grim read if that's something you want to look up and read about. The only reason that the Federation of Mugen actually found Alton and Rin at this point is because as they were climbing up a mountain to free destructive gods from their prison, their own empress, turns out, sold them out. After Alton sacrifices himself so Rin can escape, she swims straight to Spear, which is the series insert for Taiwan, I believe, to find the temple to her god and gain his power. And with this power, she demands that it wipes Mugen from the face of the planet. I think what I want to say is that while I didn't hate this book, I didn't necessarily like it either, and none of that is based on the graphic violence, the vivid imagery, or anything like that. A lot of it, honestly, is the characterization. Alton, throughout the entire book, is just kind of an asshole, and the rest of the military contingent, the Sikh, I think is how you pronounce it, they just sort of follow whatever commands he lays out for them, and they all just kind of blend together. None of them have like their own personalities or their own character arcs. It's hard to keep track of who is who. They just kind of blend together as an amorphous blob of exposition. There's a very forced enemies to friends angle between Rin and Neza, her nemesis from Sinigard, that doesn't really make a lick of sense. There's a major part of the story that I didn't really talk about, was the characters using poppy and opium to commune with the gods in a very like shamanistic ritual. And that's because, at least in my opinion, it's not very interesting. It's too, oh, weird things are happening because we're in a dream realm where nothing has to make sense because it's not supposed to. Except none of that is told well. It's just kind of happens and then it doesn't, and then it happens again. There are these hard transitions in the narrative where it goes from like real-time war to, and then suddenly Rin was flung back to the pantheon beyond the stars. She's talking to this woman on a plinth and she can see all these other gods and these unnatural beings that are not of this planet. And then she's back in the battlefield like, oh, I better stab this soldier because he's right fucking there. It's very inconsistent. I think what gets me is that Rin literally throws out everything she learned in part 1. In part 1, she was very determined, and while she had a quick temper, she was eager to learn and grow stronger. But by part 2 and 3, she just becomes kind of whiny and unfocused. The only thing she cares about is Alton's approval, and she doesn't see that her actions at the end of the book, the raising and total genocide of Mugen after she unleashes the Phoenix, puts her on the same level as them. She becomes selfish, obsessed with doing what she thinks is right by exterminating the enemy, but in turn, she herself becomes the enemy. And I just feel like that's a very dissatisfying end to an otherwise pretty okay novel. So I do just want to reiterate, I didn't hate the book. I liked part 1 a lot despite feeling like it did drag on just a little too long and was a little derivative of stuff like Harry Potter, Avatar: The Last Airbender, even the Mistborn series, which I read through before starting this book. I did like most of the action scenes, and the military strategizing sections were written pretty damn well. I felt the graphic descriptions of violence and inhumanity were brutal but realistic considering, you know, it was based on shit that actually happened in real life. But overall, I felt the pacing was inconsistent and the characters were severely underdeveloped. This was Kuang's debut novel, so maybe all of that got better with the sequels, but I don't think I enjoyed this particular book enough to read the other 2 in the trilogy. I'm glad other people really liked the book, but I just don't think it was for me, and you know what? It's okay. Not everything has to be for me. Anyway, thank you guys for watching that video. If you want to see more book reviews, I want to start doing more stuff like this because I feel like this is an interesting format that I haven't really explored before. I do apologize for, I have the script up right here on my screen, so I was looking back and forth. So if it got a little janky and kind of inconsistent, I apologize. It'll probably get better with future videos. But yeah, if you want to see more book reviews, let me know. I read a lot of fantasy and horror, but I'll also read some nonfiction and stuff as well. So yeah, if you want to see more, just let me know. Thank you guys for watching the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this one, please consider subscribing. And until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.